everyone, a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas. I'm Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. The United States and China battling over Greenland's rare earth reserves, and this is a battle that is only heating up with a lot at stake. With US President Donald Trump now weighing bold moves to try and keep Greenland out of China's orbit, we are telling you all that you need to know about the moves being made behind the scenes as well. Also on the show for you tonight, Donald Trump is now rewriting history. The 5-year-old Capitol attack in the US back in the focus, with the White House using the term peaceful protesters. We tell you all that you need to know. Protesters, meanwhile, take to the streets in Venezuela. What's next for the country? We are getting you a detailed report. All this and more coming up. The minerals that power missiles, electric cars, satellites, the phones in your pockets, now at the center of a major new global showdown. The battleground is not a desert or a battlefield as such, but the frozen remote wilderness of Greenland. Beneath the ice, lying what many believe are vast reserves of critical minerals, and the United States and China are racing to control them. This is not just competition, it's a contest for power in the future world economy after all. And China has long eyed Greenland's mining projects to further strengthen its dominance in rare earths. While US officials warned that dependence on China could threaten national security, now US President Donald Trump is willing to push farther than ever to keep Greenland out of China's orbit. Let's tell you how. The White House has confirmed that Trump is discussing multiple options. Now, the White House has confirmed that Trump is discussing multiple options, including military action to secure Greenland. The White House press secretary, in fact, saying Trump views control of the island as vital to deterring adversaries who are expanding their presence across the Arctic. And that's not even all. There may also be a deal on the table. The Wall Street Journal reporting that US Secretary of State has told lawmakers Trump prefers to buy Greenland from Denmark. Rubio emphasized that the talk of force does not mean an invasion is imminent, but allies still heard danger in that message. Denmark responded sharply. Officials warned that any attempt to seize Greenland by force would halt everything. NATO cooperation, transatlantic trust, 80 years of shared security. Greenland is an autonomous territory of Denmark, remember? Greenland's government is also demanding clarity. Its foreign minister has said they have sought a meeting with Rubio throughout 2025 without success. Denmark's foreign minister saying talks could resolve what he called misunderstandings. But the gap in the trust appears to be widening. America's partners quickly backed Denmark, in fact. Leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain issued a joint statement defending Greenland's sovereignty and the inviolability of its borders. The statement noting that Denmark, including Greenland, is part of NATO and said security in the Arctic must be achieved collectively with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter. And it brings us back to the main issue at hand. Why are America and China even fighting for Greenland? In case you're not aware, the island spans more than 2 million square kilometers, is a key Arctic territory perched between North America and Europe. It also controls access to that crucial gap, a strategic maritime choke point linking the Arctic to the Atlantic. And most importantly, beneath the ice of Greenland lies power. We are talking about oil, gas, especially rare earth minerals. These minerals are the backbone of modern technology and advanced weapons. How much rare earth reserve does Greenland really possess? Around 1.5 million metric tons, among the world's largest. While it currently produces virtually negligible amounts of rare earth minerals, the island holding 25 of the 34 minerals deemed critical by the European Union, many of which are considered by the EU as vital for both green technology as well as defense. China already dominating global rare earth processing, and analysts are saying Beijing has sought stakes in Greenland's resources to deepen that control. Analysts are saying this could give China leverage over US supply chains that Beijing has used before in trade disputes, especially last year. And as climate change melts the Arctic ice, new shipping routes open, mining becomes easier, further intensifying this race. And for China, Greenland representing both opportunity as well as risk, by the way. According to experts, the rise of new suppliers in the US, Australia, Greenland could actually weaken China's dominance and push the prices down. At the same time, Western countries are developing green mineral standards that demand cleaner and more transparent mining, areas where China reportedly struggles. And if these standards spread, Chinese rare earth products could lose access to major markets. So gaining hold over more minerals like the ones in Greenland hence becomes all the more critical for China. And for the US, Greenland offers a path towards independence from Chinese supply chains and a chance to build a more stable, sustainable system for critical minerals. So tonight the question is not even simply over whether Trump will buy Greenland or threaten force. The bigger question is whether Greenland becomes the next flashpoint in this high-stakes US-China rivalry, where minerals beneath the ice there could shape the balance of global power itself.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, the whole immigration pays a ticket to getting into the country.
Meanwhile, forget for a moment that Donald Trump's violation of international law is being discussed. The capture and arrest of another sovereign leader justified as a so-called anti-narco terror raid, all in the name of Venezuela's oil. And now Trump is floating something even more alarming, it seems. The idea of cancelling future US elections altogether. What is perhaps most disturbing here is not the statement in itself, but the fact that it no longer even shocks the world. That is truly the dystopian part, it seems. And the American president raised the idea while addressing House Republicans at their annual retreat, before quickly insisting that he was not formally calling for elections to be cancelled, by reframing his comments as an attack on Democrats rather than a proposal. Speaking at the Kennedy Center to around 70 Republican lawmakers, the US president said their policies were so bad that elections should not even be necessary, before adding that the media would brand him a dictator for even suggesting such a thing. His comments were part of a freewheeling speech that also included complaints about low approval ratings ahead of the midterm elections, also fresh musings about serving beyond the constitutionally mandated two-term limit. Yet, in doing so, Trump is just reinforcing his own stated fear of being labeled a dictator, the very fears that his critics, by the way, have long warned about. That he views the presidency less as a democratic office, really, and more as a personal weapon of power. You see, his comments come amid weak polling. Trump's approval rating has been hovering around 40%. We've been telling you about this. Despite repeatedly dismissing unfavorable polls as rigged, Trump expressed his frustration, telling his fellow Republican lawmakers he could not understand why the public was not responding to his right policies, quote unquote. He warned that losing the midterms would basically open the door to impeachment, saying plainly, I'm quoting, "If we don't win the midterms, they will find a reason to impeach me," quote unquote. Listen to this now.
The midterms. Because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
But just because Trump says it and really believes it does not make it lawful, of course. Federal law leaves no room for a US president to cancel or postpone congressional elections. In the United States of America, the timing of federal elections is set by the Congress. It is administered by individual states, overseen by the courts. Even during war or national emergencies, there is no legal mechanism really allowing a president to unilaterally suspend elections. And yet, this has not stopped Trump from repeatedly flirting with the idea. During his first term, he publicly suggested, delaying the 2020 election despite having no authority to do so. More recently, in an August meeting with the Ukrainian president, Trump appeared to express approval of Ukraine's suspension of elections under martial law. Comments that at the time drew laughter in the room but alarm among critics at the same time. He was quoted as saying, I'm quoting now, "So during war, you cannot have elections. So if we happen to be in a war, no more elections, that's good," quote unquote. That was the statement by Donald Trump back then. Notably, those remarks came on the 5th anniversary of the January 6th attack on the US Capitol, when a pro-Trump mob violently stormed the Congress to stop the certification of his 2020 election defeat. We all saw those visuals, a result that Trump, remember, has never accepted. During Tuesday's address, he again falsely claimed the 2020 election was rigged, repeating allegations of widespread voter fraud that by now have been rejected by the courts, by election officials from both parties, as well as members of his own former administration. Still, Trump is Trump, and his presidency has increasingly become defined by contempt for democratic norms. But will Trump cancel democracy in the US is still the question. Even in the land of the free and the home of the brave, a few are starting to question. In yet another example of throwing democratic principles to the wind, Donald Trump is now rewriting history. The 5-year-old Capitol attack in the US has been recast in a whole new avatar. In reality, thousands of Trump supporters violently stormed the US Capitol building on the 6th of January 2021 to stop the Congress from certifying then President-elect Joe Biden's victory. However, the White House has now released an official web page about the attack, branding the rioters as peaceful protesters. It has argued against framing the event as a violent coup attempt orchestrated by Donald Trump. The White House doubling on the US president's allegations that 2020 was a fraud-ridden election, despite all evidence suggesting otherwise. It attributed the violence to former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's security lapses and accused Democrats of using this attack to consolidate power. A timeline has been inserted to try and portray a misleading narrative. For instance, it puts the onus of escalating the tensions solely on US Capitol Police. The way in which protesters broke windows to breach the building and assaulted the police personnel has been conveniently omitted. Additionally, the website falsely claiming that no law enforcement officers lost their lives, whereas police officer, remember, died a day after being assaulted by the protesters. It also failed to mention that at least 140 personnel were injured in the Capitol attack. The White House also claiming that Pelosi had turned down Trump's offer to deploy 10,000 troops at the capital. It's worth noting that Pelosi has consistently denied receiving any such offer. She broke her silence on the webpage and lamented that falsehoods which ignited the violence continue to be spread. She stressed that the 6th of January serves as a stark warning to choose truth over lies.
Hostages, approximately.
Trump also boasting of correcting a historic wrong on his first day in office last year by pardoning close to 1,600 persons convicted or charged of offences related to the Kabul attack. All of this making you wonder, what does Trump plan to rework next as he embarks on recasting world dynamics? Anger and defiance continuing to spill onto the streets of Caracas, meanwhile, as thousands of Venezuelans rallied behind a president who is now sitting in a U.S. jail cell. Waving flags, beating drums, chanting in support of the deposed president, Maduro, and his wife. The crowd demanded their immediate release, condemning U.S. military action and calling for peace and respect for Venezuela's sovereignty. And among the protesters was the Interior Minister, a powerful figure in the Chavista movement and a longtime ally of Maduro. Cabello addressed the rally with a defiant speech, urged the supporters to stand firm, and called on Washington to free Maduro and his wife.
And they have to know over there in the administration that they have generated a terrible anti-American sentiment for them here in this country. And they won't understand, and we are not interested in explaining it. Let them have it, because here the Bolivarian revolution will move on forward, and they are going to have to return Nicholas and Celia to us.
Maduro and his wife are currently being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn after being taken into U.S. custody. Both have pleaded not guilty to multiple charges, including drug trafficking and other serious allegations. Their next court hearing is scheduled for the 17th of March. International pressure, meanwhile, is building on Washington, with the Mexican president calling on the U.S. to ensure the couple receives a fair trial. Amid the backlash, meanwhile, the U.S. seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the Atlantic. The ship, which is being shadowed by a Russian submarine, has been pursued for more than 2 weeks now as part of a U.S. blockade of Venezuelan oil exports. Expressing concern over U.S. actions, Russia has called the oil tanker our vessel, quote-unquote. The Russian Foreign Ministry saying a U.S. Coast Guard ship has been following the vessel for days now, even though it is about 4,000 kilometers from American shores. Protests also broke out in support of the couple around the world, with several countries now condemning the US military action and demanding their immediate release.
Duro contra os trabalhadores, isso enfraquece.
The protest coming at a critical moment for Venezuela after the vice president was sworn in as interim president. Her appointment is a continuation of the existing power structure. Even as the country enters a period of deep uncertainty, Rodriguez is backed by the core of Maduro's inner circle, including Interior Minister, the military chief, and Maduro's son, all of them holding big influence over Venezuela's armed forces, remember. Maduro also maintaining influence over the armed civilian groups loyal to the Maduro government. This makes the balance of power fragile and highly contested at the same time. With Maduro behind powers and anger on the streets, the United States has now laid out clear demands for the new interim government: no drug trafficking, no mass migration, and access to Venezuela's vast oil reserves. But the biggest talking point also is the condition over oil. Adding to the uncertainty are mixed signals from Washington, with Trump making broad claims that America will run Venezuela following Maduro's ouster. His Secretary of State, meanwhile, saying US has no intention of governing the country day to day. Instead, Washington says it will rely on sanctions and economic pressure to shape the country's future. The contradictions have now raised questions about how much planning has gone into the post-Maduro phase, especially when compared to past US interventions against autocratic regimes that failed to deliver stability, taking Iraq in 2003, for example. For now, Venezuela remains at a major crossroads. Pakistan's terror mask has fallen all over again. There is no pretense anymore. Blaming Afghanistan has only backfired. With the Asim Munir-led military establishment's self-goal now, Pakistan military spokesperson has owned up to his country's terror label. In a press briefing on Tuesday, in a Freudian slip, he admitted that Pakistani nationals were not only indulging in terrorism but also operating on Afghan soil. According to him, in fact, Islamabad strikes on Afghanistan killed Pakistani terrorists. Listen to this.
हमने अक्टूबर में किसको हिट किया था? We killed, we targeted not Afghans. We targeted, ये तो खुद कहते हैं ना कि जी यहाँ पे ये पाकिस्तानी है. We targeted own citizens.
And in the same breath, in fact, Pakistan continued the tirade against Afghanistan, accusing it of sheltering 2,500 terrorists from Syria without offering a shred of evidence. Pakistan military spokesperson also claiming that Afghanistan is just a geographical expression which does not have any government. These provocative claims, of course, did not go unnoticed in Kabul. The Taliban asking Pakistan now to mind its own business and condemning what it described as Islamabad's unfounded propaganda. It affirmed that any interference in Afghanistan's internal affairs was unacceptable to the people. Pakistan's worsening ties with Afghanistan coming at a juncture when the country under Asim Munir's military leadership has witnessed the deadliest year of internal violence in 2025. 1,070 violent incidents, 3,967 deaths. A testament to the instability that has now gripped Pakistan. Pakistan's rhetoric on cross-border terror was also called out by the lawmaker, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, recently. Remember, we told you about this. He asked why India's Operation Sindoor should be condemned if Pakistan claimed a right to launch strikes in Afghan territory. in the name of combating terrorism. With Afghanistan lecturing Pakistan to focus on addressing its internal challenges, a critical question arises. Will double speak on terror continue to be Pakistan's only refuge? Also on the show for you tonight, Israel is taking a step that could potentially change the map and the future of West Asia. We tell you all about the move and the implications. Also, they're getting you up to speed with the latest on the ground in Iran as the protests continue and the supreme leader faces a major challenge. A special report coming up on Kashmir's fight against drug addiction. All this and more coming up tonight. While candles were lit in Russian churches on Orthodox Christmas, the war in Ukraine showed no signs of pause. With the peace talks virtually stalemated, the fighting between Russian and Ukrainian forces has only intensified in the brutal winter months. In southern Ukraine, the port city of Odessa continuing to face daily emergency power outages with water, heating, public transport severely disrupted. This after repeated Russian strikes on energy infrastructure, which have now become routine in this war of attrition. Ukrainian energy officials have said 25 high-voltage substations were destroyed in the region during 2025 alone, leaving tens of thousands of residents without electricity in the brutal cold. Emergency crews, meanwhile, saying that the ongoing attacks by Russia have only made repair work increasingly dangerous and difficult. Further east, the Dnipro also came under attack overnight. Ukrainian authorities saying 7 people were injured, including 2 children, as fires broke out across residential neighborhoods. Critical infrastructure was damaged. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine traded competing battlefield claims. Moscow says its air defenses shot down hundreds of Ukrainian drones over the past 24 hours, while Kiev says it struck a Russian military arsenal used to store and maintain ammunition and missiles. This as Orthodox worshippers across Russia marked Christmas on the 7th of January, with all-night vigils, processions, candlelight services from the far eastern city of Anadyrь to Moscow and Siberia. President Putin also attended a Christmas service in the Moscow region, joined by veterans of Russia's military operation in Ukraine and their families.
И встречает праздник Рождества Христова. Владимирович также находится в одном из храмов здесь.
And as the war rages on, the entire West united to once again reinforce support for Ukraine. Ukrainian president, in fact, met the president of Cyprus on Wednesday ahead of participating in the ceremonial launch of the country's presidency of the EU Council. Zelensky's trip to Cyprus comes after Tuesday's negotiations in Paris, where leaders from 27 European countries and Canada, as well as US representatives and top officials from the European Union and NATO, have said that they would provide Ukraine's frontline forces with equipment and training and back them up with air, land, and sea support to deter any future Russian attacks. This was the 15th and the largest meeting of the so-called coalition of the willing, involving more heads of state and governments than ever. US envoys in person for the first time as well. Meanwhile, let's also tell you about other developments that we are tracking. Israel is taking a step that could potentially change the map and also the future of West Asia by pushing ahead with a massive settlement project east of Jerusalem. Israel is effectively preparing to slice the West Bank into two. Experts are warning this is not just construction. It's a move that could actually block any realistic path to a Palestinian state and basically lock the conflict into place for generations. A new Israeli government tender cleared the final hurdle for the WION development, inviting bids for more than 3,400 housing units. A watchdog group, Peace Now, has said work could start within weeks, calling it an accelerated effort to cement permanent control over strategic land. By advancing it, Israel is signaling it intends to build despite international opposition. Most world governments still view settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank as illegal and a direct obstacle to peace. What makes WION such a major issue is geography. It stretches from Jerusalem deep into the West Bank, linking settlements and cutting across the territory. Palestinians hope to use for a continuous, workable state. Experts are warning that once constructed, reversing it will be nearly impossible, and thus a two-state plan could become mostly symbolic. Israel captured the West Bank in 1967, and now more than 500,000 settlers live there. There has been a surge of attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank, especially in recent months. During October's olive harvest, Israeli settlers across the territory launched an average of 8 attacks daily, the most since the United Nations Humanitarian Office started collecting data nearly 20 years ago. The United Nations, meanwhile, has now warned that decades of discrimination and segregation of Palestinians in the West Bank by Israel was intensifying, and in the process, creating a kind of quote-unquote apartheid system. While the West Bank dispute unfolds, Israel faces another internal crisis over military service and who carries the burden. In Jerusalem, meanwhile, a massive protest by ultra-Orthodox or Haredi Jews against conscription turned deadly when a bus drove into the crowd, killing a teenage boy. Police detained the driver, opened an investigation as chaotic video captured hundreds fleeing in panic. In fact, the demonstration highlighting a long-running issue. Ultra-Orthodox students traditionally avoid compulsory service, saying army life threatens their religious identity as such. Many Israelis arguing that exemption is unfair, especially now as the military stretches across multiple fronts in West Asia and struggles to fill up its ranks. The IDF saying they urgently need about 12,000 new recruits. At the same time, around 80,000 Haredi men between the ages of 18 and 24 remain eligible but reportedly do not enlist. The dispute once again pressuring Prime Minister Netanyahu, who depends on ultra-Orthodox political partners while facing a military manpower crisis. Iran's supreme leader, meanwhile, is facing what may be the greatest challenge of his decades in power. As anti-government protests driven by a collapsing economy and deepening public anger spread across much of the country, the latest flashpoint also coming at Tehran's Grand Bazaar, which is the historic heart of Iran's commercial and political life, where protesters staged a sit-in to actually demand relief from the soaring prices and a rapidly falling currency. Protesters are saying security forces eventually fired tear gas to disperse the crowd as shops shut and the markets basically ground to a halt. The demonstration at the bazaar is a significant escalation. For centuries, the Grand Bazaar has been a barometer of Iranian power, and when merchants close their doors, it triggers deep economic and political distress. The unrest also coming as Iran's rial continues that free fall, hitting a record low this week. On Tuesday, $1 bought nearly 1.5 million rials, a staggering collapse for a currency that once traded at just 70 to the dollar before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The economic pain is expected to only get worse now. Iran's central bank has sharply cut subsidized dollar rates for importers. That means prices of everyday goods may push even higher. It will pass the burden directly on to consumers who have already seen their life savings bleed by years of sanctions and mismanagement. The protests, which started late last month, have turned deadly. Activists saying at least 36 people have been killed, with more than 2,000 detained. Demonstrators have been heard chanting against Iran's ruling regime. This is a rare and bold challenge to the core of the Islamic Republic. The president, meanwhile, has ordered an investigation into at least one incident involving the security forces. He even drew a sharp line between protest and violence. Pezeshkian has also ordered security forces not to crack down on economic protesters. However, officials said those carrying weapons, attacking police stations or military sites would be treated as rioters, not protesters.
این شرفای حرومزاده 16 دی اعتصابات سراسری و مامورایی که اومدن با معترضا برخورد کنن.
Meanwhile, this crisis can also lead beyond his control. Remember, he previously blamed his own government for the soaring economic crisis. Iran's military leaders, meanwhile, shifting blame outward. The army commander-in-chief has accused the United States and Israel of meddling in Iran's internal affairs, calling them historic enemies of the Iranian nation. He also issued a veiled threat of preemptive military action following warnings from Trump that America would respond if peaceful protesters were killed.
Today, there are no doubts about the hostility of the U.S. President and the criminal Prime Minister of Israel towards the Iranian nation. They allow themselves to meddle in this internal affair of ours. They tweet, they talk. They have been enemies throughout history, and 6 or 7 months ago, they killed and martyred over 1,000 Iranians, including commanders, soldiers, scientists, children, daughters, sons, women, and men.
Iran has weathered waves of protests, but this time, the combination of economic collapse, widespread unrest, and open defiance across major cities, posing a far more serious test for the country's leadership. For Ayatollah Khamenei, the question now is whether the state can actually contain a movement rooted not just in politics, but also in the daily struggles of the Iranians, just trying to survive. One of the most damaging spies in American history is now dead. A CIA officer who betrayed his country and became a key double agent for the Soviet Union and later Russia has died at the age of 84. He passed away at a federal prison in Maryland, where he was serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He was arrested in 1994 after admitting that he had sold some of the CIA's most sensitive secrets to Moscow. Over nearly a decade, he compromised more than 100 clandestine operations and betrayed the identities of more than 30 Western intelligence assets. This betrayal led to the deaths of at least 10 CIA sources. In fact, he began passing information to the KGB in 1985, seeking money to pay mounting personal debts. He received an initial payment of $50,000 known to his handlers by the code name Kolokol or the Bell. He soon identified virtually all of the CIA spies inside the Soviet Union. And in return, he was paid handsomely and eventually pocketed about $2.5 million reportedly. At the time, the then CIA director called him a malignant betrayer of his country, saying that the agents he exposed died because a traitor wanted a bigger house and a Jaguar. The cash funded a rather lavish lifestyle that included a luxury Jaguar, foreign travel, $500,000 home, despite never earning more than $70,000 a year as a CIA officer. His career at the agency spanned more than 3 decades. It began in the early 1960s with help from his father, who also worked at the CIA. Despite a history of alcohol abuse and repeated security lapses, he rose through the ranks, eventually becoming head of the CIA's Soviet Counterintelligence Unit, a position that gave him extraordinary access to secrets. His espionage continued until his arrest in February 1994, following a lengthy and painful mole hunt inside the agency. He later cooperated with investigators as part of a plea deal that spared his wife from a sentence. And with his death, a dark and costly chapter in U.S. intelligence history coming to a close, one defined by greed, betrayal, and the loss of lives in the shadows of the Cold War. King Charles is offering the public a taste of royal grandeur on their wedding day. From the summer 2027, couples will be able to host their luxury weddings at Dumfries House in Scotland, the historic royal estate of the British monarch. The new venue, called the King's Hall, is an extension designed to offer a royal atmosphere and historic elegance without the palace balcony. The space will accommodate up to 200 guests, with prices starting at £5,500 for midweek ceremonies, £8,500 for weekends. The King's Foundation saying the venue is aimed at hosting 5-star events, and the profits from the luxury events will be used to fund educational programs as well as to create jobs in the local community. This is located in the area and was built in the 18th century. The castle featuring a rare collection of furniture. In 2007, the king held a consortium to buy the estate and prevented the property and its collection from being sold off. According to the King's Foundation, the new hall, marking a new chapter in the site's history, opening the royal castle up to the public, will ensure the heritage is preserved and put to work for the public good. And for couples, this may be the closest they ever come to a royal wedding as such. For the first time, the Jammu and Kashmir government enlisting local clerics in the Srinagar district to raise awareness about the growing problem of drug addiction in the valley. Our next report telling you more.
Kashmir is combating rising addiction of drugs among the youngsters. In the series of actions taken by the government to combat the drug menace, the latest one involves religious clerics. Administration is betting big on faith-based outreach as it has proven effective in engaging larger section of society.
So the endeavor is just to reach out to largest, let's say each and every person of the society, make them aware of the issue and make them a part of this fight against drug addiction.
Around 100 mosque imams in the district are set to launch the initiative. These imams will use their Friday prayer sermons as a platform to educate people about the dangers of drug abuse and encourage community action. The official data on drug abuse uncovers the bitter truth. Around 1.3 million people in Jammu and Kashmir are affected by drug abuse. The figure has nearly doubled over the past 3 years, rising from about 0.6 million in 2022. The most commonly used drug is heroin. When we dive deeper in the data, it reveals another shocking fact. Majority of the heroin addicts. Reports estimate that nearly 33,000 syringes are used every day by drug abusers across Jammu and Kashmir, underlining the scale and severity of the crisis.
शराब जुआ यानी ताश गिनन मुसलमानों के लिए ये जायज़ नहीं है. हर इंसान को लिए जो भी हमारा दीन हमदर्द दीन है.
Security forces across Jammu and Kashmir have intensified operations against narco-terrorism, stepping up enforcement and surveillance. The Jammu and Kashmir police have made hundreds of arrests, attached properties linked to drug dealers, and strengthened monitoring along border areas.
कि माशरे के अंदर इस तरह की चीज़ें इंसान को और माशरों को बर्बाद करती हैं, इनसे भरपूर हिफाजत का पूरा इंतज़ाम करना चाहिए. बयानात के ज़रिए से, लिखने के ज़रिए से, जितना भी हो सके, सोशल मीडिया से, प्रिंट मीडिया से जितना हो सके, इसकी जो कबाहतें हैं उनको सामने लाया जाए, इसके नुकसानात को सामने लाया जाए. उम्मीद है अल्लाह की ज़ात से कि इंशाअल्लाह माशरे के अंदर इस बुराई से हम बच सकते हैं.
Pakistan remains the primary source of drug trafficking into the Kashmir region. Terror handlers across the border increasingly turn to pushing narcotics among the youth of the valley. The proceeds generated from this drug trade are used to finance narco-terrorism. Substance abuse makes young people more vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation for terror-related activities.
For the first time ever, Jammu and Kashmir government has roped in local clerics from the mosque across Srinagar district to spread awareness on the growing drug addiction in the Kashmir Valley. The authorities have been working tirelessly to control the menace, but with this step, it will further help them to control the growing drug addiction in the Kashmir Valley. With video journalist Firoz Idris Loan for WION World is One.
Our next story is from Haryana and India. There's a shocking part of the story and there's some good news. Let's just start off with the good news first. A few days ago, it was reported that Haryana had registered a 13-point improvement in sex ratio at birth in 2025. So the new year started on that positive note. Good news indeed and a ray of hope. After all, it's a major milestone in the state's fight. With the birth-sex ratio going up to 923 from 910 in 2024. Not just that, it's also the highest in the last 5 years. So while that's definitely a reason to cheer, the story of one woman from Haryana has triggered serious debate today, inviting strong reactions and a lot of concern. Let's tell you what this is about. A woman gave birth to her 11th child in Haryana. She has given birth to a son after 10 daughters. The woman and her labourer husband have been married for 19 years and their story has triggered serious concern over maternal health and that age-old desire for families to have a son, come what may. It was reportedly a high-risk delivery, but both mother and child are doing fine. The 37-year-old woman was admitted to the hospital on the 3rd of January and the baby was born the next day. The father reportedly said they were keen that there should be a son, and some of the elder daughters also wish to have a brother. There have been angry reactions on social media expressing concern over what the woman had to go through, comparing this to a trial and error method to have a son, questioning how far the obsession to have a son has now gone. What about the woman's body and what it has to go through? What's your reaction to this story? What do you have to say? Tell us what you're saying, because it's important to at least keep these conversations going. This is the 21st century after all, and it's about time that we moved beyond gender bias. UK politics is in a flux as the new year dawns. A new opinion poll has put the Labour Party in a tight spot. As per a survey conducted by online research firm YouGov, Labour has slipped below the Conservative Party for the first time since the general election held in July 2024. And this poll was conducted from the 4th of January to the 5th this year. 19% of the respondents expressed their intent to vote for the Tories as compared to 17% who reposed their faith in the ruling party. Meanwhile, the Reform UK party continues to be at the top with 26% support. Among other parties, 16% of respondents backed the Liberal Democrats. The poll assuming significance as elections are scheduled to take place across multiple local bodies in the UK later this year. The last time when Labour received such a low level of support was in October 2025. Meanwhile, the clamour for reform UK has also declined in comparison to last year. However, the UK Prime Minister is putting up a brave front. In a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, he told his colleagues to ignore the poll ratings. He told his ministers that governments lose only when they lack belief and not because of a dip in polls. Starmer urged them to focus on improving the cost of living and deliver a tangible change on the ground. He also trained his guns on Reform UK party, alleging that it was capitalising on grievance and divide in the society. Despite the UK Prime Minister's confidence, the electoral map of the UK looking increasingly fragmented if these polls become a reality in the upcoming months. A childhood classic facing a major test, one that critics fear could change the way children play with a beloved toy. By adding light, sound and motion, plastic bricks are turning smart, and the toy company behind it saying this is the future of what play will look like. Lego unveiled this new smart play system at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Now, just to put this simply, the smart bricks use sensors, tiny chips, to help track movement and position, which then helps them react during play. The company planning to launch the first set in March, starting with Star Wars, calling it its biggest leap in nearly 50 years. But not everyone really agrees. Some experts warn the technology may actually limit creativity. They say children already bring life to plastic bricks through imagination. They worry screens and smart features may start to guide how children build and think. What exactly does the smart brick look like? The smart bricks. The new brick, keeping the familiar shape inside, it holds lights, a sound unit, an accelerometer, custom electronics. The system also connecting with smart minifigures and tag tiles. These pieces recognize each other and trigger different actions. Lego claiming that the addition is a new dimension to the plastic bricks, one that caters to the different needs and desires of children. As the smart era starts, one question lingers on. Can technology boost play or will it hamper imagination? US President Donald Trump sparked a controversy after mocking transgender athletes while addressing Republican members of the US House of Representatives. While speaking about the 2026 midterm elections, Trump argued against transgender participation in women's sport, citing what he believes are valid examples from boxing and weightlifting.
But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, yeah. But she gets it, and drops the thing, walks off the stage crying. Her mother's crying, her father's crying. Guy gets up. He said, "Have you lifted before?" A little bit. And he walks up, he could have gone ding, 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 ding. I think it was 112 pounds, right? It's crazy.
It's unclear who exactly Trump was actually referring to. Many online assume that he meant Laurel Hubbard, a transgender woman from New Zealand who competed in the 2020 Olympics. She met the official requirements but later failed her tests and finished last in her group. And during those remarks, Trump also referred to Khelif's 2024 Olympic bout to Italian boxer Angela Carini. Khelif, remember, has always fought in the women's category. There is no indication that she identifies as anything else. She came under intense scrutiny in 2023 over speculation regarding her gender alongside Taiwan's Lin Yu-ting. Both were disqualified from the 2023 World Championships after reportedly failing a sex eligibility test. The results were never made public by the then governing body, the IBA. Despite the controversy, the International Olympic Committee allowed both athletes to compete in the 2024 Paris Olympics. Khelif and Lin went on to win gold medals in their respective women's categories.
He happened to win the gold medal, that young woman. He won the gold medal. There were two transition people, they both won gold medals. The whole thing is ridiculous. You have policy on your side. They don't have policy on your side.
And the remarks come as transgender participation in sport remains a highly divisive issue in US politics and a frequent focus in election campaigns. Critics are saying Trump's comments fuel harmful stereotypes, while supporters argue he is raising concerns about a level playing field in competition. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks very much for watching. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes, and millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
So is the administration really willing to risk the NATO alliance by potentially moving ahead?
Guys,
military
what I think the White House said yesterday is what I will tell you now, and I've always said. The president always retained the option. Every president, not this president, every president always retains the option. I'm not talking about Greenland. I'm just talking about globally. If the president identifies a threat to the national security of the United States, every president retains the option to address it through military means. As a diplomat, which is what I am now, and what we work on, we always prefer to settle it in different ways. That included in Venezuela. We tried repeatedly to reach an outcome here that did not involve having to go in and grab an indicted drug trafficker. Those were unsuccessful, unfortunately.
Well, Venezuela, the people of Venezuela are waking up to the same regime. Do you not worry about that?
Well, first of all, the bottom line is that there is a process now in place where we have tremendous control and leverage over what those interim authorities are doing and are able to do. But obviously this will be a process of transition. In the end, it will be up to the Venezuelan people to transform their country. We are prepared under the right conditions, using the leverage that we have, which includes the fact that they cannot move any oil unless we allow them to move it to... Well, again, I'm not going to give you a timeline on it. We want it to move as soon as possible. But We didn't expect this would. It's been 3 days since this happened, 4 days since this happened. So I understand that in this cycle and society we now live in, everyone wants instant outcomes. They want it to happen overnight. It's not going to work that way. But we're already seeing progress with this new deal that's been announced and more deals to follow. You're already seeing how the leverage the United States has over those interim authorities is going to begin to lead to positive outcomes. It doesn't cost us. It doesn't cost us.
The involvement, the U.S. involvement in Venezuela, how much will it cost?
Well, it doesn't going to cost us any money. For example, this oil deal that's happening doesn't cost us any money. On the contrary, and if it opens up,
costs no money to
well, look, I don't have the numbers.